Hey guys, and welcome to the Curious Coconut. I'm Tong, and I'm here with my co-host Adi. This is our very first episode of the year 2024, and we're both really excited to have you all back on the podcast. So, a New Year's resolution that I've set myself, and Adi has set himself as well, is to read more books this year. And since we always ask our guests what their favorite book is, we were thinking of changing the format up for this episode. So today we'll be talking about the books that we have recently read, and we'll do a book recommendation episode of some sorts.
Yeah.
And yeah, we also will be talking about a book that was recommended to us by a guest. His name is Joey. If you haven't checked out the episode, please remember to do so. Maybe after this episode.
Yeah. So I think we can also say just mention the books that we're reading, we're talking about. So the first one I'll be talking about is The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. This one is about financial freedom and achieving that. The next one we'll be talking about is Tong. Do you want to mention it? I forgot the name.
Yeah, so the book that I've read recently is called Never Finish by David Goggins. He's this ultra marathon superhuman person that just wrote about his life story. Basically, it's meant to be really motivational.
Yeah, I think
And
most people know who David Goggins is. And yeah, the third book we'll be talking about is The Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson. This was recommended to us by Joey and Annie Leakey in our climate tech episode, and make sure to check that out if you haven't already. Um, but without further ado, let's break it down. We'll talk about each book, and then yeah, just give our thoughts on the book, and hopefully you can learn something about them. So the Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. I read that last year, and it was a book that had a really huge impact on the way I looked at money, the way I looked at businesses, and it was really like one of the first books I read, and I've seen a lot of reviews about it online, and there were mixed reviews. So I wasn't sure how I found it really helpful. I'll give a brief summary of the book and what it talks about. So, MJ DeMarco, he talks about three ways of sort of becoming a millionaire, right? And achieving financial freedom. The first way he says is sidewalk. The second way is the slow lane. And the third path, which he talks about for most of the book, is called the fast lane. So in the sidewalk is basically the person who, doesn't really care about their money. They might be doing like a retail job and they don't really have any goals. The only way they hope to become a millionaire in their life is by winning a lottery or just someone donating them a bunch of money. So that's basically their goal. The second way is the slow lane. This, what he says, is what most people take to becoming rich, right? And this path is you do a 9 to 5 corporate job you do a 9 to 5 job at a corporate company, at a large company. Um, you work there for 50 years. You slowly invest your money into the stock market, and by the time you retire, you hopefully have $1 million saved up. Um, this is a great way, but it takes a really long time, like 50 years. I don't know about you, but I would like to be rich when I'm still young, not when I'm in my 70s. Um, and which is what leads us to the last one, which is the fast lane. Um, and he says there are two ways of getting rich, becoming a millionaire. It's either you're super talented, like David Goggins, and you beat all the odds, you become super famous, you're a celebrity, and everyone just loves you. That's the one way. Or if you're not as talented as David Goggins, then you have to take the other route, which is starting your own business. Um, and that's the entrepreneurial route. So he talks about the entrepreneurial method, and that's how he became a millionaire. Um, and yeah, that's the kind of the summary of the book.
Okay, that's really interesting. Is there a particular reason why you picked up this book? Because there's a lot of books that have that sort of catchy, title.
Hmm.
Um, just on top of my head, I can think of Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Is one
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
What is the other one? Like the something work week, the
The
five
4 hour
days,
work week. Yeah.
is a 4 hour work week. Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Is there a specific reason why you picked up this book?
Honestly, I read it like more than 6 months ago, so I don't know what the specific reason was, but
Right.
I think I was just reading a lot of financial books or self because last year
Hmm.
for the first time I started reading nonfiction books, and
Yeah.
this one came up, and I saw a lot of recommendations. I was, looking at YouTube and seeing
Hmm.
which kind of books are out there, what are the best financial literacy books, and this one kept popping up consistently, and yeah, then. Actually, initially, when I first started reading the book, I listened to the audiobook, and the guy who's narrated it, is the same person who wrote it, so MJ DeMarco. He sounds very arrogant while he's narrating it, and
Right.
yeah, the method of the writing, it also sounds a bit arrogant. So initially, I was
Hmm.
very turned off by the book, but after the initial like the shock, then I continued reading, and he actually, has done a lot of hard work. He put in the work. He's not like just, lucky guy who made $1 million. He actually put in all
Hmm.
the work, and he had a lot of failures, and he talks about those. So it's really interesting to see his journey, and the advice he
Hmm.
gave was really I think very relevant.
What does the guy do, MJ DeMarco?
Yeah, so what he initially did, like how he made his $1 million, was I think he moved to Phoenix, because he was super broke, he didn't have any money. He's like, I
Mhm.
need a change of lifestyle to pursue something, right? So he went to Phoenix, and he used to be a limousine driver. So he would drive rich people around in the limousine. Um, and eventually he realized that, there's a lot of people who use these limousine services. So he created a website, and this was, I think, before the .com. So I think he was doing this in 1990s,
Wow.
like late
Okay.
1990s, 2000s.
Way back. Right.
Yeah, way back. So what he did, he made a website, um, and so customers would come to his website, see he has like these limousine service, and then like afterwards he retired basically from the limousine services. Um, and he made the website, and he started working on the website. And what he did, he would basically connect different people who wanted limousine services to the people who were running those services. So like the middleman. And people would come to his website, and they would, give reviews and stuff. So he basically got on that. And yeah, he would connect businesses and people who wanted those businesses, want to use the services of those businesses. And that's how he basically made his money.
Wow, that's really interesting. And he still does the same thing
No, no,
now?
I think he sold off his website. Um,
Mm,
and then later on, he actually bought his website again because the person he sold it off to wasn't running it properly. So he bought it again. And
right.
then I don't know what he's doing now, but I think he
Yeah.
wrote the book as well just to educate other people. But I don't think he's still in the same business. He probably has a
Mm,
million other things he's doing.
yeah, for sure. What do you get out of this book that you were able to apply immediately to your life?
I won't say I was able to apply immediately to my life. Well, one of the key takeaways I did apply to my
Mhm.
life. So I guess I'll talk about that one first. So one
Yeah.
of the concepts I got three main takeaways, right? One of the concepts was to stop being a consumer and start being a producer. So
Hmm.
in the book, he talks about how, everyone is just consuming things these days, whether it's food, whether it's, just shopping, or most commonly, whether it's social media. You're listening to YouTube videos, you're watching shorts all day, and that's just for your entertainment. You're not really doing anything productive. Unless, of course, you're listening to a podcast like this, which I'm sure
Of
is super
course.
productive and helpful. Um, yeah, so most people are just consuming. And the people who are truly successful in life, if you noticed, they're all producing something. Whether it's your favorite YouTuber, they're like creating content, right? Whether it's like super successful business people like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, like they're producing content. They made these websites that are serving all these people. So all the super successful people, they have something that they're producing. And most of the population is just consuming. So, in order to become more successful, you need to stop consuming and start producing. And I'm not saying that the people who are, like super successful, they don't consume. They also consume, but their main focus is on providing these services
Yeah.
that are making their lives better.
Hmm.
That was one of the key takeaways that I took. And then I applied this to this podcast because I wanted to change my mindset. and also start producing. So we decided to start this podcast.
I
And I
didn't even
think,
know it was the I didn't even know it was the book that kind of convinced you to do this as well. Was it?
well, it wasn't, it was one of the reasons. Like, I think
Yeah.
I wanted to do it for a long time. And
Hmm.
that just kind of pushed me over the edge among with some other things, right? So it wasn't
Hmm.
just the only thing, but after reading that book, I knew that yes, this is the right way. I really want to do this. I want to start producing something that I
Yeah.
like doing as well.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'll talk about the other key takeaways as well, because I think they're super, super helpful in how you view the world. So the second key takeaway for me was um, stop trading your time for money, right? What people do, and he mentioned this, and like this is for the slow lane people, they just trade their time for money. Your entire life, you're working 5 days a week just so you can get 2 days off. And that's when you put it that way, like the way he explained it in the book as well, it was really surprising that just for I'm working 5 days just to get 2 days off. How I don't know how that's fair. I should be at least it should be like 50-50, right? Like 3.5 days I work and 3.5 days I get off out of the 7 days. But
Mm.
yeah, out of 5 days, like out of 7 days in the week, you're spending 5 days working and then you just get 2 days off. And then even those 2 days, you're like constantly thinking about work and other things that you want to do. So he said, like, if you want to work, you should do it for the experience, or you should instead of giving those 5 days to another corporation, why don't you invest those 5 days into your own business, and start building
Mm.
up something that actually serves you rather than you serving it. So that was a
Mm.
really amazing concept that even though I kind of knew this was happening in the back of my head, but having it put so clearly in front of me and right in my face,
Right.
really, really made me think about things.
Yeah. I mean that
Yeah.
concept though is I I I think you can't really apply to everyone though, right? I think some
Hmm.
people don't have the privilege of just, um working for the experience. Um
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's some people out there that have to work in order to provide. Maybe, they had like a teen pregnancy thing going on early on in their lives, and they have to
Hmm.
provide for their family, have a
Hmm.
child or whatever. What
Yeah.
do you think about that?
Yeah. No, that's definitely like a consideration, right? And yeah, like that's why it's best to do these kind of activities when you're in your 20s, when you don't have a lot of responsibilities. So now you can take the time off, right? Um, I think what MJ DeMarco did when he was young, like he was just he was doing this limousine. He was a limousine driver, so he would constantly be in the off time when he was driving. He would always have a book at hand, right? So he would be reading.
Mm.
So he'd be using his time even while he was working to kind of try and improve his mental state or his education. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, like I'm not saying that everyone can do it, right? Um, Obviously,
Yeah.
people have a lot of responsibilities that due to which they need to work and provide, whether it be to like, pay for something that like a chronic illness or just, support their family members. So this is definitely not for
Mm.
everyone, but it's like
Mm.
if you really want to be super successful, you kind of have to take those things into consideration.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you do happen to have the spare time, right?
Yeah.
Which you're using to scroll TikTok or whatever for an hour. Why not use
Yeah.
that hour to read a book or something, as you said instead?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And the last key takeaway that I had from the book, this might be a bit hard to explain, but he did this exercise in the book where he asks the
Mhm.
reader is like, how much would you like to earn in a month in order to support your ideal lifestyle? Tong, do you want to do this exercise with me? Just like answer the question, right?
Yeah, sure thing. Um, how much would I need per month?
Yeah, like to live your best lifestyle, how much do you think would you like to earn in a month? Like how
Oof.
much cash would you have to spend? Like let's say like
Um,
20K, right? Do you think if you had like 20K cash lying around a month, that would be like enough? Uh,
I
for,
would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
Let's
would be
say,
more than
okay,
enough, right?
yeah. So now you're thinking that, okay, so I just need to earn 20K a month, right? That's what
Yeah.
people might think, but that's not really what it is. You need to have 20K additional cash just like freely lying around. That's like after all your expenses have been cut out.
Hmm.
So in order to do that, he says there are two main ways that you can have 20K cash per month, right? Either you
Yeah.
have a really large amount of money, a large sum of money that you put in the bank account, and then you just earn 20K interest.
Mm.
Um, and I was doing the math. So if you want to do like if you have 20K a month, that means you want to earn 240K off of interest
Hmm.
annually. And for that math to work, you need to have like at least around $5 million. Don't quote me on this, but yeah, it's around $5 million, like a really big number, right? Most of
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
we don't have just 5 million cash lying around that we can put in the bank
Mm.
account and just chill for the rest of our lives, right?
Yeah.
So the other way to do this is by creating a business that allows you to have 20K extra in cash. And so your business can't just be producing 20K in profits. Your 20K is like the extra income, right? So you need to create a business that's around 100K that's producing 100K a month, right? So that you can put 40K, just for the expenses of the business, such as paying employees, and then 40K that should be going towards your big lump sum, like $5 million, so that over time you're growing that money and reaching your goal of just earning that like interest lifestyle. And
Hmm.
then if you have 40K towards the expensive and then 40K towards your lump sum, that leaves you 20K, right? And that's that's the kind of wealth that MJ DeMarco said you should be aiming for, right? You need to build business systems that allow you to develop 100K a month,
Mm.
which is definitely not easy.
Mm.
But you just take small steps, right? You need to start somewhere, and it's really good to have some sort of goal in mind. Once you identify how much money you need per month to live your ideal lifestyle, then you can, start building your lump sum money. Just slowly adding it up. And the best way to do that is by basically creating a business that allows you to earn that kind of income.
Mm. For sure. That's really interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about like how much money I would want to earn to be comfortable. Is that right? Just
Hmm.
like just to make me like completely happy. I
Yeah.
think these days I just think to myself like how much money should I be earning right now for me to be able to afford the lifestyle that I want to afford more
Hmm.
like and not exceed that for now because like I'm a fresh graduate as just like you.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, that's pretty good.
Hmm.
Um from hearing what you said though, I think that's really interesting. I do, however, feel like not everyone is cut to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Um, obviously, um, MJ DeMarco speaks from like an entrepreneur's perspective who has made it so far.
Hmm.
But then the fact is still that most businesses do fail, and I think
Yeah.
you do need that fire within you to be
Hmm.
able to start something. But then if you can, I think this book is like a really good pickup
Yeah,
for
for sure.
sure.
Yeah, I think like obviously the advice in there is not for everyone. And I'm not
Mm,
saying that I'm doing all the things that he recommended in the book as well, right?
mm,
Because obviously I'm I don't have the kind of money right now to be building that. And I think for me, it's just the perspective it changed, right? Looking at things from a business aspect and just, the ratio of 5 to 2 and, consumer versus producer and all those
mm,
aspects. They just change your perspective. And it's not like you read one book. and you completely change who you are, right?
Yeah.
Um, so if you want to change from being a sidewalker to to like a fast laner, like that's going to take some time. And
Yeah.
and it might not be for everyone. I'm not saying it is. It might not even be for me. I don't know. I just think that the book gave me some really good points that I hadn't come across before, and changed my perspective on a lot of things and the way I look at them.
Mm. One more thing that I just thought of while you were talking is that I was so obsessed with those sort of books before, um,
Yeah,
like self-help books, I guess you
yeah,
could call them, right?
yeah,
I was like so obsessed with them. I was reading them all the time, but then usually they give you somewhat similar information every time you read them. Like the core values are somewhat the same. Basically telling you to, don't be lazy, just start a business, invest, buy assets, don't buy liabilities, that sort of thing.
yeah.
If you do want to be a consumer, be like smart
Mm-hmm.
about it, basically.
Yeah.
And I just thought of Nathan. Remember when we had Nathan on our podcast, and
Yeah,
he
he
was
doesn't
like,
read
"I don't
anything.
read. I don't read books. I just go
Yeah,
out there and do things." I think
yeah,
that's really good to remember as well. Like these sort of books, they're really really good for you,
yeah, yeah,
but then you also have to proactively do things. You can't just sit around and just read
yeah.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the problem with a lot of people who just read self-help books. Um,
yeah,
at least I feel that I'm not one of those people that I just read them and don't implement them because I've started this podcast.
yeah,
So if you read self-help books, you need to go out and implement the advice they give, right? And
yeah.
a lot of times also what happens that you read a book, you really feel motivated for the next week. You do everything the book says for the next week, and slowly afterwards it just dies down,
That's
right?
exactly right.
I've definitely noticed that with me. I've felt it, and it happens to everyone. So you just gotta keep reading then in that case,
Yeah.
and pick
I
up a new
mean,
book each week.
I mean
Um,
that's what happens during New Year's as well, right?
yeah,
I heard that there's this like the statistic that someone has published saying that um once it's New Year's, people just flock gyms and buy gym memberships and whatever, and within like the
yeah.
fourth month, um the number has already like gone down more than half
Oh,
because
that's
people can't, yeah,
yeah.
people can't commit. People just tell themselves like I'll do it, like it's a new year, and then they'll tell themselves, okay, well, I guess I messed up my schedule already, and then it just
No,
builds up.
that's so funny that you mentioned that. This year, I think the first was a Monday, right?
Yeah,
And usually my gym schedule starts on Monday. So I'm like, okay, this year, New Year, I'm going to the gym. And I go there, it was the most crowded I've ever seen it.
exactly. It's
Like,
always like that.
yeah, everyone was there. I'm like, what the fuck is going
Yeah,
on, right? Like, why are there so
exactly.
many people here? And
Yeah,
then, yeah, a week later, like half the people are gone. It's like back to normal already.
it's
So,
back. Yeah, but you're
yeah.
you're still going to the gym, right?
Yeah, yeah. I,
Okay,
I didn't go today because I was having a headache, but I think this is the
okay,
first day I've skipped in the new year. So, um,
okay, okay.
yeah. So I'm still going strong. I'll go tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. We'll take your word for that.
Yeah, you better. Okay, I
um.
think I'll do a quick rating of the book. I think it's good to measure what books we read, right? So I'd say
Mhm.
this book out of 10 was around like 8, 8.5. So
Ooh,
the
that's really high.
Yeah, I think it's because of the impact it had on me, and it was one of the first sort of
Hmm.
financial books I had read. Um,
Yeah.
so I rated definitely quite high. And yeah,
Yeah, let me talk about my book. So the book I've read is called Never Finish by David Goggins. He's pretty
yep,
big by now if you don't know him, or if you guys listening don't know him. He's this superhuman ultra marathon, triathlon athlete, and he basically
wait,
wrote.
let me stop you. What does that even mean? Like ultra marathon and ultra triathlon? What's
It's
what's the
it's just
difference
like
between the regular and the ultra?
it's just distance wise, right? Because like if you look at marathons are 42 kilometers, sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know how much that is in miles. Sorry for the US listeners. But then an ultra marathon is 100 kilometers, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
it's like more than double of a normal marathon. And I think the average time for someone to run a marathon, like a full marathon, is like between like somewhere between like 4 hours and 4 hours and 20 minutes or something. So it's
Yeah.
like a ridiculous amount, a ridiculous length, and it obviously takes a lot of willpower to be able to complete an ultra marathon.
Yeah.
And a triathlon is basically just biking, swimming, running, um, and obviously an ultra triathlon would be even more than a regular triathlon. And
Mm-hmm.
triathlons are already considered to be like pretty mentally tough and physically
Mm-hmm.
tough.
Yeah.
So that's what David Goggins basically does. But then prior to him being this superhuman, um, he was not like that at all, and that's what he talks about in his book Never Finished, right? So it's basically like a chronological progression to where he is right now, from his birth to where he is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And before he mentioned how he was really like fat, um, and he was super unhealthy. He was not doing anything. He was not disciplined. He was just like your regular Joe, and even worse than that. And in addition to that, he also had family issues too. His dad left him. He was raised by his grandpa, all of that. And as a reader, you can't help yourself but kind of feel bad for the guy. And he himself acknowledged how tough his life was before, and he only began to realize it later in his life,
Yeah.
when he was super unhappy with himself, because he, as well as many other people, have aspirations to do better, to be a better version of yourself. And he wanted to be better. He wanted to be, strong. He didn't want to be this weak fat guy with no discipline, just waiting for death, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So he eventually got raised by his grandpa, who was also serving in the military, I think. And
Okay.
he was basically, prepping him, making sure that he was always just pushing David ever since he was young. Like after
Yeah.
his dad left him and his mom couldn't take care of him. And yeah, you just get a glimpse of his really rough childhood. But he eventually made it, and he did get stronger, obviously giving his grandpa credits for that. And then he eventually joined the Navy SEALs.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't stop there, right? After joining the SEALs, he wanted more. He wanted to, suffer. He wanted to push further. He enjoys pain. I don't know how else to put it. This guy just enjoys pain.
Yeah.
Hence doing all these things, running multiple ultra marathons, participating in multiple ultra triathlons, as well as triathlons, breaking the world record for the most chin ups in 24 hours, which is just like absurd, right? This guy is crazy.
Yeah. Didn't you
Um,
say he did like 4,600 something
some absurd
chin-ups?
number. Yeah, he did like 4,000 or something like that in 17
Yeah.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
struggled to
he
do
set
like
the world.
six.
Yeah, right. This guy, he's just not normal, and he does talk about this in his book, that you need to unlock your inner savage. And, you can't
Hmm.
just wake up late and then wait for the days to go by. You have to seize the opportunity. The more I read this book, the more I realized that it was more of a self-help book as well. I thought
Oh,
it was more gonna be more of like an autobiography, but I guess you can, in my mind, I kind of saw it as a self-help book in a way as well, because like the more you read, um,
yeah.
the more you realize like, oh, I want to develop this mental toughness as well. I want to be a
Hmm.
better version of myself. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good pickup. Some at some points in the book, I thought he came off as a little bit braggish as well.
Yeah.
And also since
So
it's not his first book either,
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like he's trying to make more money now out of people,
Yeah.
since it has worked in the first place.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's still a pretty good book. He's an interesting guy, and I think it's a relatively good pickup. Sorry,
So
you were
what
saying?
made you pick it up in the first place? Like, why'd you pick up this book?
I was introduced to my cousin's friend. I was being introduced
Okay.
to my cousin's friend who is I think he's like some board member of Equinox. I don't know if
What's
you know
Equinox?
Equinox. Equinox is this like lifestyle brand in the States.
Oh,
They own
okay.
like multiple like high-end gyms and stuff like that. But yeah, he's so he basically told me about David Goggins and how tough he is, and this guy himself, he is like really well built, and he's also someone that got motivated by David Goggins to pursue this sort of lifestyle to begin with. He's
Mm-hmm.
also like a runner, he's a trail runner more than like a road runner though. But
Mm-hmm.
he's also really interesting, and he was like telling me to give it a go, to
Yeah.
give this book a go. And yeah, eventually I picked it up, and I couldn't, I couldn't believe what I've read is true, that this guy had done so many like crazy things in his lifetime. But yeah.
David Goggins kind of also reminds me of David Blaine. I don't know if you know
Oh,
who
the
David Blaine is.
magician, is it the
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
it's the magician. And I've listened to some of his podcasts, like his
Hmm.
episodes. And yeah, he's fucking crazy. Like
Yeah.
he he got buried alive and like he stayed in a ice box for 3 days or something. He's
Yeah.
a lot of crazy things.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
continues to just blow my mind. And one of his philosophies is like he likes to test the limits of what his body can do and
Yeah.
basically break those limits. So I think, yeah,
I can
there's,
see the connection, yeah, for sure.
yeah, I guess Davids are just kind of
David.
crazy like that.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
I think towards the end of the book though, he talks about of his ultra marathon accomplishments and whatever,
Hmm.
um, where he was on the brink of basically just actually like breaking down. In
Oh.
his mind, he just didn't give up, which I
Hmm.
thought was a little bit extreme because after having read the book and after having read reviews and people's thoughts on the book, I've realized that a lot of the things that David Goggins talks about, like you shouldn't do something like that. Like if your body tells you to
Stop.
stop,
Yeah.
um, like sometimes you should listen to your body instead of telling it no, it's don't stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like no, David mentioned multiple times because he said that um I think one of the core principles in this book is that if you believe that you have reached your limit, you've actually only just reached like 60% of what you're actually capable of. That's
Hmm.
what David really wants his reader to incorporate in their own lives. It's
Yeah.
like if you're like in the gym or something and you say you can't do it
Hmm.
any more push-ups, for example, right? You're just like 60% done. You can go more, but your body just doesn't know it because your brain is
Yeah.
telling you to stop.
Yeah. Like that's the thing, right? If you're lifting heavy weights in a gym, there's a
Yeah.
potential that you can injure yourself as well, right? So
Yeah, that's exactly right.
that's why sometimes you should listen more to your body than to your brain. But then again, it's like I I feel lazy if I don't push myself to the hardest possible
Yeah.
thing, right? So
Yeah. I think
it's
that
a
is like
tricky
a sweet
balance.
spot. That's a sweet spot that everyone should kind of aim for, right?
Hmm.
Like you shouldn't go too easy on, like for example, if you're lifting weights, drawing from your example, you wouldn't want to make it too easy where
Hmm.
you're not pushing yourself, but you also wouldn't want to push yourself too hard to the point where you risk injuring yourself. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, what were your key takeaways from the book that you got?
Yep. So one of the key takeaways is probably like the 60% rule.
Yeah.
Um, every time that I do work out now, I also tell myself that I can actually go for more.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways it's true. Um,
Yeah.
I it's just my brain telling me that I can't, but in reality it's like I could have done like, quite a bit more.
Yeah.
Um,
I try to do that as well, recently that I've noticed that if I'm
yeah,
doing more body weight exercises, my body will just want to give up. Like
yeah,
let's say I'm doing ab exercises, right? My
yeah,
body wants to give up, but then when I'm at that point where my body wants to give up, I always feel like, okay, just one or two more, right? And see if I can push myself to do
yeah,
those two extra reps. And
mm,
oftentimes I find that I can actually push myself to do those extra two reps. But then I just,
yeah,
yeah, then afterwards it's hard.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so basically that's what I've been doing as well. Because usually in my gym routine it'll be like 3 or 4 sets of 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on my very last set, I would add an additional 2 or 3 reps
Mm-hmm.
just to like fully push my body to its limits.
Yeah.
And maybe even more than that whenever I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's something that I've been able to incorporate immediately, which I
Mm-hmm.
thank this book for.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, what else does it talk about? It talks about this like 1 second rule as well. David Goggins, he mentioned this 1 second thing where it takes in a human like 1 second to make a decision.
What do you mean by that?
So whether that would be like waking up, okay, either you wake up or you stay in bed and you watch TikToks. Your brain just takes like 1 second,
Yeah.
and within this 1 second, you should have made up your mind. You should tell yourself and remind yourself, what am I doing? What do I want? Like, what does future me want?
Yeah.
And then actually go by that rule. I think this is also mentioned in um this other self-help book, Atomic Habits. Atomic
Oh,
Habits. I
okay.
think it is in Atomic Habits. But yeah, it just takes like a split second to make a decision, and usually you shouldn't even outweigh the pros and cons. You should just know what you want deep inside and then make that decision for yourself. Yeah, I think that's another core principle that David Goggins talks about.
Yeah. You could also take it the wrong way though. Like, it's like, oh, you see this brownie, it looks really good. You just make the snap decision to eat it in a split
Yeah.
second. Um,
Hey, but if you wanna look good, and then
yeah,
you're over your sugar intake already, then you have
yeah,
to know better
yeah.
and tell yourself, yep, this brownie isn't for me.
You know, yeah, sometimes you gotta know when to not take the decision to do something as well. Um,
True.
which is,
That's
I think,
exactly
equally
right.
important.
Yeah,
Um,
but okay, overall this book was pretty good. I would say it was pretty okay written.
mhm. How much would you rate it?
I think I'd give it like a 6.5. I think it's a little bit overrated in terms of people saying that the quality of the book is like really good. I don't think it's like that amazing, but I
Hmm.
think what's more interesting is learning about David and his life rather than the key takeaways, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, because it's almost like an autobiography, right?
Yeah, in a way. It's still
Hmm.
good, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
Am
yeah.
I being too harsh on him? I'll give him like a 6.8. You know what? Let's do that.
Yeah. You
It
read
wasn't
his
that
other
bad
book as
either.
well, right? You read his like Can't
Yep.
Hurt Me as well.
Yep,
Would
Can't
you say
Hurt
that one's
Me, which she
better?
wrote before. I think it's like somewhat similar.
Yeah.
There's not that much more that I've learned from David. But it's still, yeah, I mean they're both okay. I'd both give them around like a 6.5 to 7.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I think Can't Hurt Me is one of the books that I have on my reading list
Yeah.
that I want to get to at some point. I'm just avoiding it.
Yeah.
Um,
But definitely it's an easy read though. It's like a book that you can really just read quickly.
Yeah, yeah,
It doesn't, you know how you read some books and then it requires you to go back a few pages to make sure that you've, like, I
yeah,
don't know, maybe it's just me, but then when some of the contents are too hard to grasp or something, you tend to go back.
yeah. No, there's definitely more nonfiction books that I've read. A lot of times you can just read a nonfiction book, right? But
Mm,
in order to like fully understand what the book is saying and how you can implement it, sometimes you just need to take a few seconds to think about, oh, that's what the author is saying. And
mm,
it's hard to internalize those thoughts and
yeah.
feelings and truly accept them. So
Mm,
yeah, I've definitely had those books where I need to just slow it down and read it again.
yeah.
Yeah.
But let's move on and let's talk about the book that we have both read, the one
Yes.
recommended to us by Joey and Annaliki.
Yeah.
Do you want to go over the book for
Yeah,
us?
so The Ministry for the Future, it's written by Kim Stanley Robinson, and it's actually a sci-fi category that I've never actually known existed. It's called solar punk, and Tong actually told me it's about the future. You know how cyberpunk is very dystopian and like AI takes over the world and it's very bad. Solar punk is the opposite of that. So it's about where climate change gets solved, and it's more of a happy ending sort of book. So, Tong, do you want to do a quick read of the synopsis of the book, just so our audience has an idea of what it's about?
So the synopsis reads, established in 2025, the purpose of the new organization was simple: to advocate for the world's future generations and to protect all living creatures, present and future. It soon became known as the Ministry of the Future, and this is its story. From legendary science fiction Kim Stanley Robinson comes a vision of climate change unlike any ever imagined. Told entirely through fictional eyewitness accounts, The Ministry of the Future is a masterpiece of imagination. The story of how climate change will affect us over the decades to come. Its setting is not a desolate post apocalyptic world, but a future that is almost upon us, and in which we might just overcome the extraordinary challenge we face. It is a novel both immediate and impactful, desperate and hopeful in equal measure, and it is one of the most powerful and original books on climate change ever written.
Yeah, so
That's
I think that's a pretty good overview of the what the book is about. But
yeah,
basically, it's about climate change, and it starts off, I think, right after 2024. Um,
yeah,
and a series of disasters occur, which help create this organization called the Ministry for the Future. Um, I think it's the UN that makes this organization, and they are tasked with representing the future generations that haven't been born yet and represent their rights. So basically, we follow this character called Maria, or no, Mary, who is
Mary. Yeah,
the leader of this Ministry for the Future. She's the central character, but there's a lot of like other characters that we just see viewpoints from.
yeah. Definitely not your usual fiction book. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, as you said, it takes a perspective of different parties within the novel, and it just gives everyone's perspectives as well as highlighting different effects of climate change all around the world.
Yeah.
Definitely very interesting. Nothing I've ever read before.
Yeah, and I think the writing style was also very unique. Like most
Mm,
fiction books are somewhat more linear. You follow one character. Um, and in this book, you kind of experience many different cultures, many different places, and how they are reacting to climate change and how people are differing, what the different solutions are, what the problems that arise are. And overall, I think it was also a bit scary because
mhm.
the the author apparently did a lot of research in into the disasters that occurred during the book, and they could very well happen. And yeah, just thinking about that is was a very scary experience while I was reading that, because we're not that far away from where the book starts.
Mm. Yeah, from the very start of the book already, right? There was this massive heat stroke happening in India, killing millions, if I'm not
It was like
mistaken, of
20
people.
million people.
Isn't yeah, and because it was so well researched by the author, all of these events that happen in the book are relatively plausible, which is the
Mm-hmm.
scary part, right? Um, and yeah, it's definitely different. It's not. I would say that this book isn't necessarily like something you'd pick pick up and immerse yourself in,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's more informational, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It just bombards you with like a bunch of facts, and
Yeah. So
you
it's
try
not
to
the
imagine.
traditional fiction, right?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I feel like it's very non-fiction type of fiction where the author imagines a world where all
Mm.
these things take place. So, should we talk about our thoughts on the book and maybe get into some spoilers?
Yeah, you can start if you want.
Yeah, so I just want to make a spoiler warning. I don't know if these are major spoilers, but if you want to go read the book yourself, yeah, I would recommend reading it at least once. And I think it really expands your perspective on like unique ways of writing, but also what the world could look like in the future. But now we're going to discuss some things we found interesting about the book that are specifically like based on the plot of the book. Um, but yeah, from the very start, uh, the heat wave occurs, and we follow this character called Frank, um, who survives, who is one of the only survivors of the heat wave. Um, and he is so deeply impacted by the heat wave and seeing so much death in one place that he decides to take action. Um, and basically, he first goes to Children of Gali, which is a terrorist organization that kind of rises up because of the heat wave. And they plan to do destructive activities such as blowing up anything that's driven by fuel, such as like planes and ships, to help the world transition to a more green way of looking at things. So that's what happens. Eventually, Frank goes to Zurich, where Mary is. That's where the head of the Ministry for the Future is. And he kidnaps her and kind of forces her to think of, non-traditional ways of solving these climate change problem. Because at this point in the book, the ministry is struggling to make people do what they want. No one's really listening to them because they don't have any teeth. So Frank suggests, based by kidnapping her, that you need to look at non-conventional ways of looking at things and maybe have a back wing of the ministry for the future that does things in a more discreet way. Um, and yeah, so that's I guess the basic start of the book. But one of the things I found super interesting was some of the solutions that they came up with to sort of combat climate change. Um, to One of them was what people in India did. They basically sprayed the sky with some sort of material that would reflect sunlight from from the earth back to into space so that not a lot of heat enters the atmosphere. And this is similar to what happens when a volcano erupts. So there's a lot of ash in the air, which blocks out the sun and actually cools the temperature. In the book itself, there's a lot of controversy that, the UN was like, Indians shouldn't do this because this could have unforeseen impacts on the climate and the overall ecosystem. But the Indians went and did it anyway because they're like, we need to do something so this kind of stuff doesn't happen again.
Mm. Well, I personally like the concept of the carbon coin. Um,
Yeah.
when I read the book for the first time, and I heard
Yeah.
carbon coin, I was quite surprised because it's something Adi and I have been working on for like a year and a half.
Yeah. We
Wait, when
worked
was
on
this
it.
book published?
Oh, it
like
was published in
2019.
2019, 2020, I
Oh,
think.
they've
So it was
coined it
before
before.
us.
Yeah.
She beat us,
Uh,
the author beat us to it.
yeah, but then Adi and I, we were also working on a project that was mentioned in this book as well, called the carbon coin, and similar to the carbon coin in the novel. I don't know. It's there's so much resemblance, I think, because the carbon coin mentioned in this book is also some sort of cryptocurrency,
Hmm.
um, and it is basically a coin that you get for polluting the earth. Basically, it's like something that is it's a currency that's basically tied to anything that doesn't emit carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and it's being used as like the normal day-to-day currency.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was interesting the way the carbon coin was approached because when Mary first she basically tries to get the banks of the world to back this coin so it's more secure. When
Yeah,
she first does it, they don't listen to her. They're like, this is not in our interest. We're not
yeah,
going to do it, basically.
yeah,
But later on, when circumstances keep getting worse, they're like, okay, we'll back this. And that was basically kind of the end of capitalism in the book. And I found that quite interesting because
mm,
even then, when people first started using the coin, it was because of their own self-interest, right?
yeah,
It's because they wanted to get more money. It wasn't really to do good for the planet. It was because they were getting free money, which
yeah,
is kind of the concept we were trying to accomplish as well with our startup,
yeah,
because we realized that people only care about money. Um, but if we can make people view carbon dioxide as a form of money, then we can help, change their perspective and essentially help the climate.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that kind of threw me off a little bit when I first read it. I was like, holy shit, this is very similar.
Yeah, same here. Um, a thing though that I didn't enjoy so much about the book was because you know how there's always in the book there's like a disaster, right? They talk about like some sort of disaster and they come
Hmm.
up with like a solution, but then it
Hmm.
doesn't really talk about like the solution having drawbacks, and I think that's what the book kind of lacks.
Yeah, the consequences.
The consequences, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Do
yeah.
you feel
Even
that as well?
yeah, definitely. I think yeah, that was definitely a big part of it because, um, one of the main reasons for why the UN agency was against the Indians just putting so much sort of random particles in the air that hadn't been researched before, it's because they didn't foresee any, um, they couldn't they couldn't predict what would happen to the ecosystem, right? And like, yeah, it just seems to have worked out without having any consequences. Like the Indians sprayed it so much.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think later on in the book they do it again as well. But yeah, that solution doesn't have any negative consequences. And it's very similar with a lot of the other solutions that they provide. Like there's no negative consequences.
Mm,
Which isn't how the real world works. Um,
exactly.
but another solution that I found really interesting that I personally had never thought about or heard of was the stuff they did in Antarctica, right? They
Yeah.
What they did in the book is to slow down the rise in sea level, they pumped out water from underneath the glaciers. So the glaciers stop moving as fast towards this ocean and thus, therefore, um, don't melt as fast, which I thought was a really interesting thing. I had never heard of it before. Um, because by pumping out the water back to the surface and freezing it, you're basically reducing the lubricant that the glacier has to slide on. So it basically slows down the rise in sea level, which was one of the major solutions that the book had. And yeah, that one was
Mm,
really unique in my opinion.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of the book overall though? Did you
Um,
enjoy it?
I think I enjoyed the concept of the book, but
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't really like. the story aspect of it or the plot aspect of
Yeah.
it.
You
Um,
can fully immerse yourself basically, right?
mhm.
But it's the core like ideas within the book that kind of
Yeah,
resonate with you.
yeah. It's like the concepts that I hadn't thought of, and reading about them really made me
Mm,
think deeply about different things. But overall, in terms of story, and in terms of characters and the plot, yeah, I don't think it was a very good fiction book. um,
yeah,
but yeah, if you just read it just to experience something new and unique, I think that's what it does.
yeah. Ratings wise, what are we gonna give it?
You
What do
tell
you?
me, what would you give it?
Okay, I have to compare it to like the David Goggins one. Did I enjoy David Goggins more than?
Hmm,
Mm, I think I'd give this one like a 6.4.
6.4.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Am I being too harsh?
No, I don't think so. Well, yeah, for me, treating it as a treating rating it as a fiction book, I'd rate it like 6, right?
Hmm.
Because I don't think it was very good in terms of storyline.
Mm,
And just, I read a lot more better fictional books, but in
yeah.
terms of just, yeah, unique, I'd say it's like 7, so around 6.5 as well.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's a good read, and like it's definitely very unique in terms that there's not many other books that I've read that are like this. So that's what I would recommend this book for.
Yeah, yeah, same. It's definitely not something that you wouldn't enjoy reading.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely better than the average book. Hence, we didn't give it like below a 5.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just give it a go, I guess.
Well, let's end it here then, the episode. Overall, those are the 3 books that we read. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give it a like and comment which books that you're reading this year, or which are some of your favorite books. Potentially, we might consider reading them and reviewing them in the future. If you like this kind of episode where we talk about books and what we have learned from them, make sure to tell us as well, so that we'll continue to do it. And yeah, that's all for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.